All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our Diamond Allegiance webinar. Today we have a special guest who happens to be a friend of mine. I'm Eric Lassiter. I'm the Director of Membership for the Diamond Allegiance, and we're happy to have Shane Greene join us, who was drafted in 2019 and a 15th round pick by the New York Yankees.
2009.
Oh,
2009.
2009. Sorry, 2009. I missed it. All-Star game in 2019. Excuse me.
There you go.
And he has played for the Yankees, Tigers, Braves, and Dodgers in his career so far. And again, a 2019 All-Star. But we're happy to have you join us, Shane. So thanks for coming on.
For sure. Appreciate you having me.
A couple things. Obviously, everybody gets to hear about the guys that are highly recruited prospects out of high school or even out of the Power Five conferences and their story into the big leagues. Yours is a little bit more unique. Obviously, I know not a super highly touted high school player, but would love to hear your story for a lot of the kids who may be late to develop or don't have some of the looks that they're necessarily looking for right now. And so they can have a chance to hear your story in how you made it to the big leagues.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we can start like almost in middle school, growing up in Florida, playing little league and travel ball, you're basically playing year round. I was always on the better teams in little league or whatever, but once you get to like the big field, things start to change, right? So then you go to you go to the big field, and I always pitched, but once I got to the big field, that's kind of when I realized that I probably wasn't the greatest hitter. And then fast forward to high school, I made junior varsity my freshman year. At that point in time, I was pitching, but I was also playing some third base and some right field. Ended up breaking my wrist diving for a ball. And then when I came back from there, I was doing more pitching than anything because my wrist just was kind of jacked up. But also I was never the greatest fielder. Anyways, fast forward to sophomore year of high school. I made the varsity team, but I made the varsity team as a pitcher only. Back in my high school days, pitcher only wasn't like a very usual, like popular thing. So I think I was the only, or maybe two of us that were pitcher onlys on varsity that year. But I was a sophomore, and my coach at the time was David Boltman, and he basically said like, "Hey, you're not gonna pitch much, but we got this kid who's kind of like our dude. We think that you could learn a lot from him, shadow him, do everything he does. If it's his start day, you'll do the books in the dugout, and then whatever his routine is, post start day, you'll just do exactly that. If he's got a long run today, you're running with him. If he's got a bullpen, you got a bullpen." So that's what I did. And my sophomore year, I didn't pitch at all at the varsity level, although I was on the varsity roster. And I got sent down to junior varsity like once every 2 weeks or so just to pitch and get some innings. And then I would come back and practice with varsity and continue to shadow him. Junior year, I pitched well, but I wasn't throwing hard still. I was like 82, probably 83. But I pitched well because that's when I developed a breaking ball. Fast forward to senior year, I feel like I had some pretty high expectations just because my junior year went so well. But I still wasn't throwing hard. I was topping out at like 86. And I didn't pitch great. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And then at the end of my senior year, I only had one college offer. So I took that offer. It was to the University of West Florida, where I went to pitch, obviously pitcher only. And then when I was there, I found out I had Tommy John surgery, or needed Tommy John surgery, and I had Tommy John surgery after my freshman year. So it kind of like, as far as the high school part goes, for the guys that feel like, they're not getting many offers, or, they're not getting the schools that they want, or they're not getting enough exposure, this, that, and the other. Like, I never really dealt with that because at the time I didn't realize, it was just different back then, I guess. But I only had one offer, so like I didn't overthink it. I just took it. You know what I mean? I only really talked to two schools. Florida Southern talked to me. I went on a visit there, but they never put anything in front of me. So as soon as there was something put in front of me, I just took it right away.
I think some of that has changed, right, with social media. I know, obviously, I played way before you, was also one of the few even earlier than you that was told they were a pitcher only, and it was
Yeah.
kind of like a snide off thing where most people are like, "Oh my gosh." But I was like you.
Yeah.
I didn't. Once I saw the kids started throwing harder, I was like, "All right, I'm good with this. Put me on the one throwing
Yeah.
the baseball instead of standing in the batter's box."
Yeah.
Um,
And our day, pitcher only basically meant like you probably won't play for much longer. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
you know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely understand that. But I never really threw hard until after I came back from Tommy John.
And so
Um
where did you end up? Did you stay at West Florida for after surgery or?
no, I ended up leaving there. I transferred to Daytona Beach Community College, and did basically all my rehab on my own there. Um, but before surgery, I hit 89 a couple times. And then my first time on a radar gun after surgery, I was 90 to 92, which is like, I just did a Zoom call the other day with some guys that are going through Tommy John and they're in college right now. And they were asking me, like, basically, are they going to gain velocity because they're having the surgery? And my answer to that is like, well, maybe. Like just because you're having that surgery, people think just because you have Tommy John, you're going to throw harder. That's not necessarily the case. One of my best friends at the time, he was my roommate. He had Tommy John a month after I did. He gained 1 miles an hour. So like basically didn't gain any. And I gained 4 or 5, which is like
Right.
a lot.
Yeah.
And we did the exact same rehab together every single day. So potentially I was lucky, but I attribute it to like, that year was the first time in my life that I wasn't playing baseball year round. And so I was actually lifting and running and working out and like focusing on like getting stronger and more powerful. When prior to that, I literally just played baseball. Like I never went to the gym ever. So, and he was already kind of a gym rat. And so he kind of took me under his wing our sophomore year when we were rehabbing. And I got much stronger because I had never done it before. And then my velo jumped. So,
So you
yeah,
probably
you
had
could.
some untapped potential to a certain extent because he was
I would
already in the
definitely
weight
say
room
that.
pre-surgery,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. He was 90, 91 before the surgery. I was barely touching 89 before the surgery. He came out 90, 92, and I came out 92, 94. So yeah, I definitely think that uh, what that year taught me the most was like, you got to put in the work if you want to sustain whatever it is you're doing, right? Where like before I was just playing, I learned that like the weight room is a pretty important. I'm not the biggest, strongest person in the world, but I learned how important it was to do to get where I wanted to go, I guess.
So that kind of, I'm assuming you seeing those velo jumps kind of changed even your vision and where your baseball career could go once you got to Daytona State and started seeing those velocity jumps. Did that kind of give you another step in motivation to say like, wait, maybe there's more to this than me just getting a college diploma or playing 4 years in college baseball? Or did that happen a little later as
Um,
the season went on?
so my kind of so my freshman year, I obviously played. I pitched like 20 innings or something, and then I had the Tommy John, and then I transferred. So then my sophomore year, I was just a student. I wasn't on the baseball team at all. I had Bright Futures, so I was just going to community college because it was paid for Bright Futures. I had a conversation with the coach at Daytona Beach who allowed me and my roommate to use the baseball field to do our throwing program with a chance to either walk on or maybe even earn a scholarship. They had this was like the first time they were doing this kind of thing. I think they had like a developmental team, so almost like a
Yeah.
JV team. So they were like, worst case scenario, you guys can play on that team and earn a spot. So, and anyways, he allowed us to use the facilities to do it. But for me, it happened so fast. Like I was off the mound for the first time after surgery, like 2 months prior to the draft. So
Wow.
I got off the mound for the first time, and then I got off the mound for the second time, and then now like I'm healthy. I haven't pitched in a year. They had the college wood bat league in Central Florida. I don't know if they still have that or not. But there was a
So I think
team in
it's now
Clare.
like the Florida Collegiate League has kind of replaced that a
Yeah,
little bit, but yeah.
okay. They had a team at East Ridge, my high school. So they had a team in Claremont that I was going to play for. So I called Jeff Deerdorf, who's the scout for the Yankees now. But when I was 8, 9 years old, he was playing third base at AAA level with the Yankees. So I used to go to him for hitting lessons, which obviously didn't work out. But but what did work out was he became a good family friend of ours, and reached out to him 100 times, basically asking him like, hey, can you watch me throw a bullpen and just talk to the schools that you know or have relationships with to get them to watch me during the summer in this league, so potentially I can get on a baseball scholarship again and go to school for free but be on a team, blah 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 blah. Sure, no problem. So he meets us at a local field in Claremont. My best friend's catching me. He didn't even catch. His little sister's like 5 years old, holding the radar gun behind the L screen. Jeff's like standing down third baseline, and I'm just throwing a bullpen. No expectations at all, right? I haven't been on a radar gun. I'm just literally throwing a bullpen. I know Jeff's there. Afterwards, Jeff's like, do you want to play professional baseball? And I'm like, well, obviously, and so he's like, well, when can you do that again? And I was like, well, that's my third time. I've been going once a week. So give me like a week. He's like, all right, a week from today back here, I'm going to bring another guy. I'm like, okay. So go through the week, go back to the same field, same thing. My buddy's back there catching. He brought in a cross checker. I threw a bullpen again. I was 90-92. Same deal. When can you do that again? I don't know. Give me a week. The following week, they had me drive to Tampa. I went to the Yankees complex and I pitched in like a scrimmage game on the backfields against guys that were already playing pro ball in the lower levels with the Yankees. And I pitched 1 inning. And when I came off the mound, like into the dugout, Jeff came walking over and he was smiling from ear to ear. And I'm like, what's so funny? And he's like, you know how hard you were just throwing? I was like, I have no idea. He said, you got up to 94. I was like, no way. He's like, yeah, your stock just went way up. And I was like, let's go. So that was literally like 10 or 11 days before the draft. So like
Wow.
it all happened so fast that I didn't even know what was going on. So much so that the day of the draft, I texted him and I was like, hey, should I pay attention to this thing? And he's like, yeah, but not till after the 10th round. I'm like, okay. So I got it on the computer and me and my buddy are playing Call of Duty and we're not even paying attention. We just have it on like speaker over in the corner. We're playing Call of Duty and next thing you know, our dads come running in the house and they're like, you just got drafted. We're like, what? We didn't even realize it was off. The computer had died. We were just playing Call of Duty, And we're like, what? That's crazy. So we started freaking out and then Jeff called me and like, congratulations. And then he's like, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow or the next day. I'm like, all right, cool. And so we're obviously crazy ecstatic. Like it all happened so fast. It's like a blur. And then 2 days later, he called me again. I have no idea how any of this works. I don't have an agent. I don't have anything. It just happened like that. Jeff calls me. He's like, hey, they want to know how much it will take for you to sign. And I'm like, Jeff, I
Tell me the answer, right?
Yeah, he's like, just give me a number, and so that I can tell him. And I'm like, 250,000. And he's like, I'll call you back. Hang up the phone. He calls me back like 10 minutes later, and he's like, they said they'll give you 100. I said, send me the address. I'll be there tomorrow. So I packed my shit up and drove to Tampa and signed that contract, and here I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. It was crazy.
One of the things that you mentioned was obviously going through Tommy John, and you talked about it a little bit. But obviously, for any of the people who are tuning in right now or going to watch this later, injuries happen in baseball, and now at a younger rate. Is there any kind of advice that you would give to anybody? Like you said, there's setbacks are going to happen. How do you deal with them? Don't expect obviously that you're going to do what you did and jump 5 miles an hour, but is there anything specific that you would give to these, these players who may be dealing with injury early on in their career to know that, it's not over for you. There's a lot of hard work ahead of you, but what do you do next?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple answers to that question. One of them is there's a saying in pro ball where the best ability is availability. So like learning your body, figuring out what works for you to stay healthy for as long as possible will give you the most opportunities to get to the next level, no matter what level you're at. But injuries most definitely happen. And when they happen, like understand that it's not the end of the world, right? You just have to assess where you're at, have a plan, make a plan, have a plan, and then execute the plan. And you're gonna have setbacks. Like there was multiple times during my Tommy John rehab that I would be playing catch and I'd be like, I think I just blew out again. Like I'm talking like extremely painful stuff. not just like, I don't feel good. Like, no, something just happened. And because we had transfer schools and whatnot, me and my buddy Matt were just kind of doing it all together. We didn't have like a physical therapist or anybody to tell us right from wrong. And it would happen to both of us on different days, and we would just shut it down, take a day or two off, and then we try to throw again. And most of the time it would be okay. Um, so like we were kind of just making it up as we went. But what I learned from that was just like listen to your body, number one. Number two, understand that you are injured. So anything can happen. Like your body is a crazy thing. So like things may still hurt for a while, but you have to understand that it's like a growing pain and not being injured. And that it's going to be different for everybody. You know what I mean? Like I said, there was multiple times I stopped because I thought I was done, but then I tried it again 2 days later and I felt fine. So it's a part of the rehabilitation process. But I will say that like mentally, for me, not being able to play baseball for a year, watching all my friends play, I realized how much I loved it. And I knew that like if I wasn't gonna make it back and be bigger or stronger or throw harder or whatever, it wasn't gonna be from lack of effort. So I woke up every day doing whatever I could do to get better. And then, a year later, I was throwing 90, 92, 93, 94.
Yeah, so obviously don't get frustrated is one of those key points, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, for sure.
and listen to your body. Just because it hurts doesn't mean it happened again, but take some time off. Don't just try to keep throwing through it whenever you're
Yeah.
coming back from injury. Listen to your body. Take a few days off if you need it. I
Especially
think,
when you're young. You have plenty
yeah,
of time to make it to the big leagues, right? If the big leagues is the goal and you're 17, like I didn't debut until I was 26, you know.
yeah,
And if somebody would have told me it was going to take till I was 30, I would have said, "Okay, sign me up." So like
absolutely.
you have so much time. You just can't lose hope. You can't lose faith. One of the analogies I like to use when describing like that mentality, I guess, is like if you're a pilot flying a plane and an engine goes out, you have to continue flying the plane or you're going to crash. If the other
Absolutely.
engine goes out, you got to continue flying the plane or you're going to crash. So if you get injured, that's basically like an engine going out, right? You have to keep flying the plane. If you stop flying the plane at any point, you're done. So your career and your life are your plane. Never stop flying the plane. Continue moving forward.
It's a great analogy. And then obviously you mentioned a couple things, and I know it was obviously a different time. I'm quite a few years older than you, but we didn't have the kind of technology that's available. And I know even now, when you first got drafted in 2009, the tech and
Yeah.
all the different analytics were not what they are, once you got to the big leagues, even, um,
Hmm.
is there something that you learned from different guys, whether it be taking care of your body, mobility things, stuff that you just were almost jaded to a little bit as when you were younger and just kind of athletic naturally, and as your career's gone on, that maybe some of these young guys need to hear as far as taking care of their bodies?
Yeah. I think at a young age, people don't realize how important it is uh, to stretch pre and post uh, working out or game or whatever. Like basically stay moving. It's like people talk about, oh, I'm 50 years old. That's why my back hurts. Well, no, your back hurts because you stopped moving 20 years ago, right? You have to continue moving. And once you get into these higher levels, especially in pro ball for the first year or two, and you're riding these buses for 6 to 12 hours and you're playing 160 games in 180 days, like you have to come up with a program that's going to keep your body fluid and keep your body healthy. um, but that's when you have to consult with strength coaches and conditioning coaches. So it's like you still have to train, but you can't overtrain, and then it goes back to like listen to your body, right? So I mean, the biggest thing for me personally in season is people always give me crap for it, all my teammates, but like I'm always stretching. That's what
I,
works for me. And it could be different for the next person, but for me, I'm always stretching. And I tell people all the time, like, imagine if I didn't stretch, how tight I would be, how bound up, because I'm naturally a bounded up person. So, and then plus as you get to the higher levels, like take advantage. People say like stay out of the training room. Like, yeah, stay out of the training room. You can't complain about everything, but if you have a program set in place, then take advantage of the training room. You can't
absolutely.
walk in there complaining about your knee hurting and then the next day your neck hurts. But if you have a program, like today I need to do my shoulder program, and tomorrow I'm going to do my hip program, and this day I'm going to do my ankle pro. Like if you have a program, staying in the training room is fine. So I think that there's a little misconception there, but more than anything, it goes back to listen to your body, take care of your body, and the best ability is availability.
I think that's one of the things that the Diamond Allegiance really has harped on. Obviously, each one of our organizations gets a custom branded app, but within that app, we've learned that just watching and me being a high school coach also, these kids don't even know how to stretch and properly open up their
Right.
body to give them the results that they want. And so I was wondering, within our app, we have a mobility and strength testing with
Hmm.
AI and all those things. Like, how do you think that would have improved you, like having something like that at a young age, right? And learning how your body moves and even fixing some of those deficiencies that maybe you found at
Yeah.
22 or 23 years old.
Well, I think that's why everybody in the big leagues throws 100 now, because
Absolutely.
they have this information provided to them at a much younger age, right? Where like when you were 13 or when I was 13, the running and the conditioning and the lifting I was doing was basically like military style, like punishment running.
No doubt.
Like go run 40 hills, like basically like let's see how tough you are. Like that was working out. Now now people have personalized programs, so that's why people are throwing harder. That's why people are running faster. That's why people are jumping higher, because they have access to these personalized programs at a much younger age. And if you start doing that at, 16 years old, now you're 22, 6 years of personalized program, where like I didn't get a personalized program until I was 20.
You're right.
You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
I
So
don't
then
think
6
I
years
ever
later,
had one.
yeah, so 6 years later, I'm 26. That's like almost old in the baseball world. You know what I mean? So, I think that's why people are throwing harder and running faster and jumping higher now, because they have access to that. So that's definitely changing the game. And then with that you can even start talking about like the analytics with like the TrackMan stuff and the hit track stuff, like all that kind of stuff, and how big of an impact that's taken onto the game. Where like when I first got even to the big leagues in 2014, like sure we had scouting reports and they might shift over if like Big Poppy's up, right? But it wasn't like a shift every single hitter, or like what should we throw this guy in this count, the catcher checking his wristband. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
the game will forever evolve. And now that technology is where it is just in the world, like who knows what's going to happen, but there's some really good tools out there to be
absolutely.
used. But I will always forever say, like, work on your mental and be aware of your body and be aware of your health.
I got a couple good questions in from some of the attendees live in the webinar, which kind of allude to this. What does your daily stretching routine look like personally? And then what do you do for nutrition and or mindset? Because obviously you just spoke about mindset and then nutrition. Like how big of a key is that as you go through, especially with obviously the grind of a big league season, the travel, all that
Yeah.
stuff? How do you maintain the proper nutrition? And then what is your actual daily stretching routine? Give us a day. Obviously I know it's different every day depending on what you're doing, but give us a little example of those things.
So if I'm being completely transparent, one of my biggest flaws is like I'll get into like I'll do something I really like. Like let's say my strength coach or my conditioning coach or whatever showed me a stretch and I'm like, wow, I really like that. I will hammer that thing every day for like 30 days. But as soon as he shows me another one I really like, I'll hammer that one for, you know what I mean? So like that's one of my flaws. So I couldn't give you like an exact routine
Right.
as far as stretching or mobility goes, because I kind of bounce around. But I will say that um the guy that I train with now, he's always frustrated with me because I take too long to warm up, but that's because I'm always stretching, right? So it's like I might not be doing the same exact stretch every day forever, but I take a while to warm up because I take pride in making sure that like I'm loose and ready to go before I try to do something. I'm not going to get the most out of this single leg squat if I'm super bound up and tight and not loose and probably not even sweating yet. To me, I'm not going to get the most out of that exercise unless I'm sweating first.
Right.
So to me, the biggest thing is like awareness of the body, but like warm up before the warm up, if that
I
makes
like
sense. Like
that.
the like even like the high school player that's going out, you got him going on the line at whatever 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a stretch. Like take pride in being stretched and ready before that stretch. Like
Absolutely.
that stretch is really just to make sure that the kid that's not taking care of it on his own is stretched and doesn't pull a hammy, because not everybody's going to take care of themselves. But realistically, you should take care of yourself.
Yeah, to me as a high school coach, I look at that as the team stretching period as a time really for you to be together and be unified. But we
Yeah,
also, I mean, you've been to some of our practices, but we also give about a 45-minute window before that even happens to all of our
right.
guys to do their own individual routines because everybody should
Bingo.
have one and it shouldn't be the same because, my third baseman may have some hip immobilities that, bother him that he really needs to work on that we're not going to really emphasize in a team stretch or a
Right.
pitcher may have X, Y, or Z to work on. So I think that's really important to point out that it shouldn't be the same for everybody. It should be different. And then even if you are doing team stretches, it's not necessarily really there to really get everybody fully loose.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I played with many people who got to stretch and they haven't stretched yet, and they're the best in the world,
Perfectly fine, right?
But
Yeah, exactly.
right, but awareness, I'm very aware that I'm a very bound up person. So I have to be extremely loose and hot before I go stretch, or I'll never be able to throw properly. My mechanics won't be right. My arm will start barking, whether it's my shoulder, my elbow, whatever, because I'm not loose enough, where the next guy potentially he is loose enough just naturally, right? So it kind of goes back to the awareness thing. But if I was to make a recommendation to a kid, especially in like the college level, like take some pride and being ready before you have to be ready. Like if you're not ready when you have to be ready, then you're probably behind because somebody's going to be ready before you have to be ready.
Absolutely. I think you just answered some problems with your golf game. I think maybe you need to stretch and swing a little bit more before you get
Well,
on
the
there.
craziest thing about that is the least amount I play golf, the better I hit them. So I just got to play. I got to play like once a year. I'll be good.
There you go. All right. So on the nutrition, is there anything specific that you like to do? Are you counting carbs? Are you doing anything crazy? Or are you just making sure
I
that you're
mean,
eating healthy stuff essentially?
nutrition's so dicey because similar to like my stretch routine where I bounce around, I've tried every diet that you could probably try. At one point in my life,
Absolutely.
I was a full vegan for 10 straight months. So like I've tried it all, I've done it all. Um
Probably another listen to your body type deal too, right? I'm sure through that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
taking.
Well, and nowadays they have like you can get your blood tested and stuff, and they can tell you like what to eat and what to stay away from, which I've never actually done. But more than anything, like do some research, find some people that you believe know what they're talking about, right? And then if you believe in that, I would say do that. At the end of the day, like it's about what you believe in, right? Like whether it's placebo effect or not, if it doesn't work out, you got to be able to sleep at night. So find something that you believe in nutritional wise and then stick to it, because really sticking to a diet or sticking to a plan, as much as it's for your health, it's for your mental as well. Like there's just something about having a plan and executing a plan that makes you feel confident and prepared, even
Absolutely.
dialed into the nutrition, that just doing that um like will give you an edge when performing. But once you get to like the college level and the professional level, a lot of the meals will be provided for you. Um, so then once that starts happening, like every once in a while, you're gonna get provided like not a great meal probably, right? So it's like when you can make good choices, make them, and then when you can't, make better ones.
Yeah, that's
You,
good.
so it's like,
Especially, I'm sure in the minor leagues they weren't exactly feeding you the
yeah,
best food every given
nah,
day.
especially 15 years ago, man, we were eating chicken fingers in every kind of way you could make a chicken finger. One day it was chicken parm, the next day it was just a chicken tender, the next day it was like chicken cordon bleu, but it was all the same chicken tenders with stuff piled on top of it.
All right, I have a couple more questions for you, and then
Yeah.
we'll let you get off here and get back to work. But is there one your mindset? I know one of your mindsets that may be a little too highly rated for this call, but what's your mindset when you're going out to take the mound? What are some things that no matter how you feel, because obviously as a pitcher in the big leagues, you're not going to feel that you're best every single day. So how do you get
No.
through that when you don't feel your best? Because I think that's something that a lot of young kids struggle with. I mean,
Mhm.
we have guys all the time, and I hear it through all different programs that are in the Diamond Legions, where they don't feel great. Next thing you know, they think they need Tommy John because they're not in perfect condition. Or, hey,
Right.
coach, I don't know if I can throw. I'm a little tight. What is your mindset when it comes to those things when you don't have your best day? How do you get through that?
Um, well, I think that one, especially now more than ever, probably with hit tracks and TrackMan and everything, like everybody's so worried about what the iPad says, right? Or like how much the ball's moving, or how hard it was off
Hard
the
they're
bat.
throwing.
Yeah, or how hard they're throwing. They people stop talking about like the thought process in which you're doing it, right? So one small example is one time I played with James McCann, catcher with Detroit. He's with the Orioles now, but he was in like we had a really good relationship. He was in like a funk. He was like 1 for 20 or maybe even worse. And we were just talking about it, and he's like, "Man, I just don't feel right up there." And I'm like, "Well, are you focusing on hitting the ball?" And he's like, "Well, I'm working on trying the," and I'm like, "No, but in game, are you trying to hit the baseball or are you trying to have a good swing? Because if you're trying to have a good swing, when the pitcher's trying to strike you out, well, then that's why you're not hitting the baseball, right?" So,
Exactly.
like, the mentality is like when you're in between the lines for competition in game, like you have to focus on the competition at hand, which is for a hitter, hit the baseball, and pitcher, hit the mitt, right?
Yeah.
Like worry about how much it's moving and how to get it to move or what your bat path is doing and like maybe like whatever, I'm no hitter, right? But like your bat path or what your hands are doing or whatever where you're stepping, like worry about that pre-game. Once the game starts, you have to focus on competing. If you're not focused on competing, you are not going to win the competition, right?
Absolutely.
So
I think that's something that a lot of high school kids now, because the data is literally given to them mid-game. Like the other
100%.
pitchers on a travel team have their stats up. Hey, you come in the game, maybe he walks 3 hitters and strikes out 3. Isn't worried
Yeah,
about the walks. They come in the dugout and are asking how hard they're throwing. Sometimes I just think what they're thinking about as successful is wrong. And I think, like you said, all that stuff is great when you're in a practice setting, right?
yeah, of
Or you're
course.
in a lesson setting. You should be working on your swing. You should be working on your fundamentals. But one of the things I try to harp on with our players is once you get in between the lines, it's FIO. Figure it out. That's
Yeah,
all there is to do. If you're throwing it up, change your vision. Do something simple, right? Like
no
don't
doubt.
start breaking down all of your mechanics in the middle of a game, or then your brain is really in the wrong place because you're not worried about hitting the glove. If you're worried about are my hands breaking? Is my arm here at foot strike? Like it's
No
too
doubt.
late when you're in a game, right?
No doubt. So it's like one I'm a big analogy guy. So my analogy for that would be like, all right, Mike Tyson, if he's in the boxing ring and he's fighting, he's not worried about how he's gonna throw his right hook or how he's gonna throw his left undercut. He's just throwing them because he's trying to knock this guy out. Now,
Absolutely.
if he gets knocked out when he's training for his next fight, during the training, he will be worried about how and when he's throwing these punches. But in fight is reaction. During
Trust.
game, it's just reaction. And that's when it goes back to having a plan and executing the plan so that you're prepared and confident so that you can compete at a high level. Right. And so it's like use the tools for tools. But when you're competing, you're fighting. You're literally in a boxing ring and you're throwing haymakers, and there will be a winner and there will be a loser. And if you lose because you're worried about how you're swinging or how you're throwing your right hook, while the other guy is just trying to hit you square in the nose, it's not going to be easy to sleep at night. But if
No.
but if you know that you're literally like I always say, bring your nuts first. If you bring it and you're full competitive mode and you lose, you can live with that. It's much easier to sleep at night. And then the following day, you go back to the drawing board to figure out how you won't lose the next time. You practice that, you work on that. And then when it's time to fight again, you fight.
I love it. I love it. And then I'll end with this, and then we'll go ahead and let you get back to work, like I said. But is there any piece of advice that maybe you got? And I'm putting you on the spot here. But is there any piece of advice that you got from a big leaguer once you were getting up to the big leagues that you think maybe would help, a high school age athlete know? Or is it kind of what you just said? Did somebody come up and tell you, like, hey, Don't worry about all that other stuff. You just gotta bring it and be prepared to go and battle. Or is there something else that maybe somebody mentioned to you
Um,
along the way that really stood out to you?
well, I learned a lot from Francisco Rodriguez, as far as pitching goes, but at the lower levels, like high school and college, the thing I learned most from him was how to call pitches or what pitches to throw and when and how. Um, but at the lower levels, like high school and college, a lot of times the coach is doing that. So
Right.
if we have a coach webinar, I would love to talk to them about how and what to throw when. But players, pay attention because at some point you're gonna call your own game. Like when you're watching a big league game on TV and you see a sequence, like in your head, you don't have to tell anybody, but in your head, like know what you might throw. And then if this guy throws it, like look at the result and be like, damn, was I right or was I wrong? Or if they throw something else and they succeed, like, well, maybe I wasn't right. And this is why that succeeded. Like forever be a student of the game. I think that you can do that at any level. Um, I would say for a high school or even a college player, like the biggest piece of advice would be like we kind of just talked about it. It's a fight, it's a competition during the game, but uh learn how to slow the game down because
That's good.
the game will get really fast. Like really, 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 really fast, really, 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 really quick. And next thing you know, boom, it's gone. Um, it's different for everybody. I suggest learning how important breathing is and learning how to control your breath in those high intense moments. And that stuff starts with like your bullpens, your cage work, your workout, your running, your sprinting. Like always be aware of what your breath is doing. And that will help you slow the heart rate down in those big moments because you're going to have big moments. Um, and then if you can control your breath and you can control your thoughts and you can control your heart rate, it will be much easier to control the situation that you're in game.
That's
Um,
awesome. I
yeah,
did just get two more questions I'm gonna hit you with before we get
yeah,
off.
rip them, rip them.
These could be a little different because obviously back then travel baseball was in a different kind of bracket, but it says, what do you think would have improved your travel baseball experience? And then top tip for parents of travel baseball players. Both of those questions were two that we just got here.
Um, what was the first question?
The first
What would
question, what do you think would have improved your travel baseball experience?
um I mean I never played for like the best team around. Uh at the time it was like the Scorpions or the Renegades, I think they were called.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
Renegades
never
back in the day.
yeah, yeah, I was never on either one of those teams, but um we always had a lot of fun. And growing up in Florida, you know, there's a tournament every weekend somewhere close, you know, so we were always in something. I truthfully don't know if there could have been a better travel baseball experience. I played with like the same group of guys that I played with in high school, kind of like all the way up, and none of us were really on any of the best teams. I think it's probably much different now than it was then, but I would say like, who cares if you're not on the best team? Like
Yeah, right. Like
you're
you
on,
weren't a top team guy is what they call it nowadays, right? And
yeah,
so
like
you may have been on a
who
second
cares?
team. Like who cares? How about you just go get better and show your ability, right?
Yeah, like go play, man, because someday in your life you won't play anymore.
Yeah.
So
So
like take advantage that you can play.
I'm assuming that's also probably one of the tips that you could give to parents of travel baseball is don't
Yeah,
worry about necessarily what team, but what else would you say for parents?
to a parent.
What's a
I
good?
mean,
Yeah,
I don't have any of my own kids, and I'm sure it's much more difficult for a parent, but um, gosh, man, you got to let the coaches coach. One, your kid doesn't listen to you probably because you're the parent, right? So like yelling at them what to do or get their elbow up or rock and fire, you know, whatever. What just like we were practicing the other no, just let the coaches coach, let your kid play and be a parent. If you wanna talk about how to hit or how to throw later on that night when the games are over or the next day or whatever, and you wanna coach them up because 'cause they're your kid, great. But during the game, let your kid play and let the coaches coach. Because if you're yelling something at him and the coach is yelling something at him and he's yelling something at himself, it's probably not going to end well,
Not
right?
going to be able to do a lot of things you just talked about, right? Control your breathing, so
Yeah,
zone in on what you're trying to do
yeah.
when
If you
everything
want to
else is
yell,
happening.
if you want to yell at your kid during a baseball game, tell him to find his breath or to
Yeah.
slow the game down and leave it at that. So understand like what he's trying to do, and you can yell at him for that, but let the kid play, man. When I go, you see me when I come to your guys' games, like I'm like I'm overstanding by myself because I can't hear what some of the parents are saying. Like it's so hard for me to hear it. One, most of them don't know what they're talking about. So being that passionate about something is great, but being passionate about something that you don't know anything about is not great, right?
It's
So
dangerous, is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So be passionate, but let your kid play, man. Let the coaches coach. And if anything else, be available for your kid. You know, if he wants to talk about it, talk about it. If he doesn't want to talk about it, then don't talk about it. Talk about it later. If he wants to hit extra batting practice, do it. If he wants to get there early, do it. Like be there for him that way. But end game, man, just let him play.
I think that's a huge point because one of the things that I see, obviously having a travel baseball organization myself and having buddies all throughout this industry is, especially now in travel baseball, they have enough pressure on themselves to perform every day with the amount of colleges and schools that are in attendance to watch them play. That do they really need the added pressure of mom or dad telling them that they stunk that day or what they should have done different that day?
Yeah,
I think, like you're saying, the love and support goes a long way when a kid already
no doubt.
has the weight on his shoulders to perform. He wants to be as good as you want him to be. I promise that, you know.
No
And
doubt.
so I think the support and love and letting them know, hey, I support you even when you go 0 for 3, son, or even when you
Yeah.
throw 5 innings to give up 8 runs. That goes a long way with a kid with the pressure that he already has on his shoulders and that he's put on himself because he wants to be a great player.
Yeah, like you can be honest with your kid too. Like you suck today. But let's
Yeah.
talk about, let's talk about why. But a lot of times I see probably dads more than moms, like they're so angry with their kid for sucking today, where it's like, dude, this is such a hard game. First of all, baseball's the hardest game in the world. You can do everything right and suck, and then you
Yep.
can do everything wrong and be great today. So like, stop being so angry, man, and just talk to your kid about it.